Good everybody, and welcome to our Consultant Partners Salesforce Reporting 101 for Nonprofits webinar. My name is Matt Devine, and I am happy to be with you today on behalf of Consultant Partners, along with my colleague Dan Weik, a data consultant here with Consultant, as we have a look and explore the reporting options for a nonprofit within the Salesforce environment. Today, we're going to be looking at a number of different aspects of a webinar from a reporting perspective from Salesforce. Before we get started, I just want to make a couple notes. Number one, everybody is muted during our call, but I encourage you to go ahead. There's a little chat window that's available for you. Feel free to go ahead and ask some questions along the way. We've got some scheduled time at the end of our webinar today to answer some of those questions and perhaps guide you in some other directions beyond what we have planned as part of our agenda. Also, our webinar today is being recorded. So once we are finished, we'll send up a follow-up email for everybody so you can have access to this webinar and view it again at another time if you'd like to, perhaps even share it with some colleagues. Now, for today's webinar, we're going to cover a few key topic areas in the interest of an individual who is starting to use the reporting functionality in Salesforce for really the first time. A lot of basic and introductory topics we're going to cover today. One of the first things we want to cover is talking about where is the reports home screen, and once we're there, how can we navigate the reports home screen and what can we see within the structure? We're going to talk about the different report types that exist inside of Salesforce and which ones, as we're getting started, are most applicable, easiest to use, and perhaps most helpful from the nonprofit perspective. We're going to have a look at viewing a standard report inside of Salesforce, one that already exists out of the box, to have a look at some of the things that we can do with such a report. And then also we'll talk about how we can customize that report just a little bit and save it on our own. And then we'll also have a look at creating a new report from scratch. So let's go ahead and get within our Salesforce environment. Whether you're using Luminate CRM, the Nonprofit Success Pack, or some other platform within Salesforce, the place that we're going to go and focus on today to look at creating reports for our organization within our Reports tab. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're on your home screen for Salesforce, maybe a Contacts or Accounts tab, whatever the case might be, we're always going to have access to view our reports by clicking the Reports tab up on top of the screen. Now, something that you might be aware of as you navigate from object to object or tab to tab within Salesforce is that our navigation on our left-hand side stays pretty consistent. We've got a Create New option. We can see our recent items, Recycle Bin, as well as some other features depending on what tab you're on. But for the most part, that left navigation stays the same. However, when we jump into our Reports tab and our Reports home screen, that navigation goes away and it's replaced by another section of folders within our Reports screen. And again, for those of you who are seeing this maybe for the first time, this is what I like to refer to as our Reports home screen. A couple of different things going on here that will be very useful for you to know about as you begin navigating this environment. Let's go ahead and start with the left-hand side or window that's a part of our Reports home screen here. It's in this spot where we will find all the different folders that exist within our Salesforce platform for saving our reports to when we create them. You'll notice that there are two different color report folders. One is sort of a manila folder, and it's in this folder where we're going to go ahead and store and save our reports when we create them. The light blue folders with the little bar chart inside, these are the folders we're going to use to go ahead and store our dashboards when we save them and create them inside of Salesforce. Now, for some of us, we might be asking the question, well, gosh, I kind of have an idea what a report is. I've worked in Excel before. I have an idea of maybe rows and columns and some good information from the different fields that I'm saving information to inside of Salesforce, but gosh, what is a dashboard? Well, we can think about a dashboard as really being a collection of different reports that we've run and having the results of these reports stored and saved in a graphical format. So you might have a collection of bar charts and line charts and pie charts, some gauges and some other things that ultimately might help transform into a dashboard for us. Okay. There's a couple key folders that I want to go ahead and point out for us as we're looking at our report. And the first one of these is called the Unfiled Public Reports folder. This is a folder that everybody in your organization will have access to, and in some regard, it's sort of like a dumping ground, if you will. Really a placeholder where if we're creating a new report and we're not quite sure what other out-of-box folder to put it into, oftentimes we'll put it into this Unfiled Public Reports folder while everybody can still see it. Perhaps we're waiting for a new folder to be created, and at that point, we'll go ahead and move that report from the Unfiled Public Reports folder to another more specific folder that everybody can go ahead and view. Two other folders I want to bring to our attention here. One of them is the My Personal Custom Reports folder, and the other is the My Personal Dashboards folder. These are significant to every one of us as a user logging into Salesforce, because the reports or dashboards that we save to these folders are accessible only by us. Again, nobody else in our organization can see what's in these folders. Oftentimes, we'll use these folders for reports or dashboards that really pertain to only what we're doing within our tasks in our organization. And other times, we'll save reports here temporarily. Maybe we've got a report or dashboard in progress. Eventually, we're going to save it to another folder that makes more sense for our organization. But for now, we'll just save it to our personal custom reports folder in the meantime. Now, the number of folders that we have set up currently inside of our environment are minimal compared to some that I've seen in the past. Sometimes this reporting section or these folders can grow immensely longer. And so we want to have a great way, an easy way to sort of navigate the different report folders and dashboard folders that are available to us. And in order to do that, we can go ahead and use our dynamic search up on top here. And if I'm searching for a word that exists in a folder title, it's going to help narrow down my list of report folders and dashboard folders for me. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and search for the word data. And you will notice that my list of reports my folders, narrows down compared to the list that I'm currently seeing. So we've got a great way to go ahead and filter down depending on what folder we might be searching for. If we've got a pretty big list within our instance of Salesforce, this is a great tool to go ahead and use. Now, I've got different folders that exist here, some of them that I've created on my own, others that have come out of the box with Salesforce and perhaps as part of a third-party application like the Nonprofit Success Pack, Luminate CRM, or another third-party platform that you're using. This list of folders will continue to grow as you or others within your organization creates new folders, or perhaps you continue to add additional third-party applications along the way. Now, creating a new folder for yourself is extremely easy to do. Up in the little corner here, we see a folder that has a little starburst next to it and a drop-down arrow. And I can either select New Report Folder or New Dashboard Folder to create a brand new folder that I'd like to use. And when I click that link, I can give it a name and click Save. And now I'm ready to go ahead and add additional reports to this brand new folder that I've created here. Another thing that I'd like to share is we have the ability to expand our folders option here, meaning that if we can't quite see all the different titles, we can go ahead and expand my navigation, my sidebar here, or go ahead and actually expand or contract them. Okay. Now, the other side of my reports option, my home screen that I have beyond looking at my folders, is another portion that allows me to see the different reports that are available within my environment here. Currently, we are seeing, based off of my pick list view, any items that I've recently viewed. And this could be our dashboards or it could be reports. And the way we know a dashboard from a report is our dashboard is going to have a little bar chart next to it. And then our report's going to have a little, what looks like an Excel spreadsheet here next to it. Okay. Now, in addition to seeing the difference between a bar chart and an Excel spreadsheet, we also see the names of my report. The names are going to be in this bluish color, a little bit bold, and they're actually going to be a link to the report itself. Now, below that, we're also going to have a description of what that report means. Okay, so essentially, if I'm looking at that description, and this is sort of a best practice I like to share with people, is that when you're creating a report and you're sharing it with other people in your organization, make sure we go ahead and put a description in there so everybody understands what that report entails. It might make sense to you as you're getting started, but for others, it might be a little bit difficult to follow along with. Now, other things that we're seeing on this report screen here is we've got some listed. We can see a little icon here with a little blue arrow next to it. This is going to tell us that if we're working with a report that has been installed with one of the packages or applications that we are using. Another column that we can look at is the folder column. This tells us what folder our report is in. And then we can also see who created the report itself. Now, in addition to looking at the items that I've recently viewed or reports and dashboards that I've recently viewed, I can also go ahead and I can see all the items that exist within this folder. You'll notice when I go to all items, now I've got a collection of 109 total dashboards and reports in my view here. I can also have a look at items that I've recently created. You'll see my list narrows down to 76. And then also you can see a listing of items that I've subscribed to. Now, if you're not familiar with subscribing to reports, what this essentially means is that you're going to be looking for report notifications when the metrics of a specific report are important to you and they meet certain conditions or criteria. And then you can receive an email, a chatter post, or a Salesforce app notification when a report has met the measurements and requirements that you're looking for. Now, in addition to being able to filter this list based off of my items or others, is that I can also go ahead and distinguish, well, I only want to look at reports, or maybe I only want to look at dashboards. So directly from this screen here, we can completely customize what's important to us and what we want to see, depending on what it is that we're wanting to work with on that day. Now, in addition to having a search for our folders, we also have a search for our reports. This is extremely helpful as the number of reports you're working with continue to grow and grow and grow. This search works in the exact same way as my folder search works. I can go ahead and put in a keyword, and when I use a keyword, we'll go ahead and say contact in a second here. This search will look not only in the title of my report, but it will also search for that same word in the description of a report. So if I search for contact, you will see that my list narrows down from 109 to 14, all based off of searching for a keyword. Something else to point out is that when we are looking at our complete list of reports, I do have an option to go ahead and define how many reports I want to see on my screen, perhaps 10 at a time, and I want to use my next buttons. Or I can go ahead and say, let's go ahead and see up to 200 of them if I would like to, and then scroll through. Now, each one of these columns also, we can sort by alphabetically, if that's helpful for us. Now, the final column that I want to point out is the action column here. We've got 3 different things we can go ahead and do from the action drop-down arrow. We can go ahead and click Customize, and this allows us to configure any filters or fields that we might want to see within our report. My colleague Dan is going to show that off to us here in just a little bit. I could go ahead and delete a report, and essentially, I think we all know what delete means. We can remove it from our Salesforce environment. And then also we have an option of exporting the report results into a file that we can open within the Excel platform. So there's a lot of different things going on here on my reports home screen. Now, in addition to the items that we've talked about so far, there's two other big things that I want to point out in this environment. One of them is that when we're looking and using the search functionality for our reports, you'll notice as I click from folder to folder, that predefines what reports I'm going to see in my little window right here. Again, I've got 1 in my household reports folder. I've got 7 in my NPSP health check folder, and so on. You'll notice, however, when I click all folders text, this will display for me every single report and dashboard that's available within my Salesforce platform. Very important. When you create a report or you're searching for one, I like to make it a best practice to make sure you've got that all folders text highlighted. Because what will happen is that if you decide to go ahead and search for a report title, we'll go ahead and go with mailing list. You'll notice as I start to type in mailing, my report doesn't exist anywhere. That's because I've got my unfiled public reports folder highlighted, and that therefore is the folder that I'm searching through. I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten phone calls and emails from organizations saying, Matt, I know that I just created a report. I don't know what happened to it. My first question is always, well, what folder are you searching in? Again, if we are highlighting our all folders text up on top of all my folders, and I search for the name of a report, we're guaranteed to find it within my environment here. So now that we've had a pretty good look at all the different options that are available within my reports home screen, the next thing I'd like to do is talk about the different report types that exist within my Salesforce platform. And to access those, I'm actually going to go ahead and click my New Report button. Now, whenever we're creating a new report from scratch inside of Salesforce, the first thing that we get to do is decide what report type I want to use. Now, report type for some of us might not quite be a familiar term yet. And so we can think about a report type as helping us define what object, and then as a result of that, what groups of records we are hoping to report on or pull into a report within the Salesforce platform. Now, I won't kid you, when you first get in and work and look at report types, this sometimes can be a bit intimidating, because although there are only about 10 different folders here, these all expand, and the list for some of these categories can be quite long and confusing. All right. What we need to remember is that ultimately, when we want to run a report for a different object or grouping of records inside of Salesforce, we need to make sure the name of that object is somehow included within one of the report types that I'm looking for, or there's a significant parent-child relationship to the objects and records that I'm looking to report on. Now, again, there are dozens and dozens and honestly hundreds of different report types, but what I want to point out to you today is a couple that can be very useful for us, and it can really get us a long way as we get started using Salesforce and our nonprofit platforms for the first time. One of these report types is within our accounts and contacts folders, and it's called accounts. Now, starting with this report type can be very beneficial because it will list for us every single account, whether it's an organization account or a household account, inside of our Salesforce environment. Looking at an account record type can often be useful if maybe we want to send out a mailing. And you know what? We don't want to send it to every single contact within our account. So let's go ahead and make sure we look at the account level and we're targeting and sending families and businesses as a whole versus the people and contacts that exist within those. So that's one right there. Another report type, which is going to be extremely useful as you get started in the environment, is the contacts and accounts report type. This not only gives us access to all the account objects and the fields within the account object, but also we can see the individual contacts and the fields that make up those contacts within the accounts as well. Again, when we're selecting the contacts and accounts report type here. Very useful, perhaps, if maybe we want to go ahead and create an email list, because in this case, we're targeting every person individually with an email. versus with our accounts, perhaps we're sending out a mailing to a household in itself. Now, there's really one other report that I'd like us to consider working with and practicing with as we get started within our reports environment, and that's donations. All right, this is going to go ahead and display for us a listing of all the different donations or perhaps transactions that we're recording inside of our Salesforce platform, whether they're pending, they're received, they're pledged, whatever stages that you might be using. Donations report type is going to be a great place for us to go ahead and start looking at different transactions as they come into our environment. And again, as you get used to these three and you like to poke around a bit more at the others that are available, as I mentioned, there are definitely others here, some involving campaigns, activities, and so on and so forth. So you can go ahead and make sure you take some time and explore these different report types. But again, a great place to get started, looking at donations, looking at accounts, and looking at contacts and accounts. So now that we've had a look at what the report's home screen looks like, we've talked about some different report types that can help get us started as we are creating brand new reports. The next thing that I'd like us to go ahead and transition to is looking at a report that exists out of the box within our Salesforce platform and really gives us an opportunity to see what exists when we're opening up a report for the first time. Now, one of these reports here is a mailing list report, and essentially what contacts exists in my database. Now, to open up a report from our reports home screen, it's very simple to do. We can go ahead and click the mailing list link here, and it brings us to a screen, which ultimately is the result of the report customizations and filters that we put into it. Now, in this case, like I mentioned, this is just simply a mailing list report of all the different contacts that might exist in my database. Many things going on here. As I mentioned before, when we're thinking about reports, in a lot of ways, we can relate them to Excel spreadsheets. We've got our columns, and we got our rows of different data or records. But obviously, within Salesforce, we can do so much more. Now, I'm a self-proclaimed data geek. I love numbers, all right? When I first started working within the Salesforce Reports platform, I realized there is an incredible amount of information that we can report on. And essentially, there is very little, if anything at all, that we can't pull into a report. But it does take some time to get to learn and get used to the reporting environment. Many, many hours go into getting used to all the different tools and options that are available within the reporting platform inside of Salesforce. Some things that I want to point out today that can be useful as we get started when we're looking at a report that's already been created. The very first thing is the ability to go ahead and schedule future runs for a report. And essentially what this means is that we can go ahead and subscribe ourselves or perhaps others within our organization to be emailed the report based off of a different frequency, completely defined by us, daily, weekly, monthly. We can define the start date and the end date for when we want to start receiving these reports. We can even go as far as defining what time of day we want this report to be run. Maybe I'm coming into the office every morning at 7:30, and I want to see the latest and greatest donations that have come in the last 24 hours. And so maybe I'd like my donations report, for example, to be run at 7 a.m. so it's nice and fresh in my email inbox, or maybe your boss's inbox as you go ahead and start your day here. All right, so definitely options we have available to us if we want to go ahead and schedule a report to be run and emailed to us in the future. A couple other buttons that I want to point out that will be important as we get started here. One of these is customize. Now, I'm not going to get into the customization piece. Dan is going to go ahead and show us how to do that just a little bit. Customize allows us to completely define what fields we want to see in the end result of my report. Also add filters to my report as well. You'll notice that we've got two different buttons that refer to save. Sometimes these can be confusing. The save button, when clicked, is going to allow us to go ahead and rename and replace within a folder the report that we're currently looking at. The Save As option is going to allow us to go ahead and completely save a new version of this report giving it any name we want to, and also allowing us to put it into one of these report folders listed within my pick list here. Save allows us to go ahead and save over a report that exists, giving it a new name. Save as allows us to go ahead and save that report as sort of a second version. A couple other buttons to point out: printable view and export details. Both of these options end up with the result of giving us an Excel spreadsheet to go ahead and have a look at this data from Excel or from Salesforce within Excel. Two key differences. Number one, our printable view here. If I go ahead and open up one of it here, you will see that my printable view formatting to it. I've got a nice structure here, and there's some color for all my headers for my fields. The column lists are already set up based off of the info that I have within my spreadsheet and within the Excel document. I like to go ahead and recommend using such a report export, again, the printable view, if I want to go ahead and maybe pull something into an annual report or format and add into some other sharing functionality for others to see. Now, the other way we can go ahead and share or export our results is using the export details button. All right, what this is going to go ahead and do is allow us to go ahead and export these reports inside of Excel using an XLS format or a CSV file. I recommend this type of an export when we simply want to go ahead and take some data out and then ultimately also go ahead and manipulate it. And when we're looking at this file type, it pretty much is cut and dry rows and columns of data. There is no formatting. Nice, easy way for us to go ahead and manipulate this data further inside of Excel if we need to. Two other buttons that I want to point out before I turn it over to Dan for some actual examples of working within a report. I've got an option to go ahead and add these people to a campaign if I'm tracking campaign members for one reason or another. But then also, I've got my subscribe button here as well. And a little bit I talked about being able to subscribe to a report based off of different metrics when they're met, and I want to make sure that I'm emailed or alerted somehow about them. I can go ahead and subscribe to a report in this way here as well. Definitely something to take a look at when you have some time. All right, and now with that, I'm actually going to go ahead and pass the presentation over to my colleague Dan to take us through how to work and customize a report and also create a brand new one from scratch.
Hi, everyone. So as we get started, just going off of this mailing list report that Matt was just walking us through, we're going to jump right into the customizing of it. And we'll go right here to this customize button. And that brings us to the screen where we're really able to define the results that we want to see in the report, as well as the filters and criteria that we use to drill into that report. You'll notice that we've got three sections on here. The top section right here will be where we create our filters and add our criteria. And we also have our preview pane for the results that will be in our report. And that will be the end results that the report creates for us. But then also on this left side, we have the fields that are available to us to either use as part of the criteria or as part of the results for this report. And this the fields that are available in this left column are completely dictated by the report type that we create. So as Matt talked about, this is a contacts and accounts report. So that means the fields that are available to us here for this report are going to be fields from the contacts and accounts objects. A couple things to note on here. Currently, this is set to show all accounts. So all accounts, which means all accounts that are in your Salesforce instance that you have permissions to view, will be available in the results field. You can limit that down based on your settings to my accounts, or my contacts, or my accounts. And just keep in mind when you're using the my contacts or my accounts, Salesforce views that as you're the owner of those accounts or contacts. So it will limit to the ones that you actually own. And based upon your settings, if you're using teams, you can also view team accounts through the hierarchy. The date field is just that. It gives us several options to use date as part of the criteria for this report. This is actually based on the created date. So it's showing which, it's going to include based on which date the accounts or contacts were created on. Right now that's set to all time, so it basically makes that a null field. But if you wanted to look for contacts that were created within the last year, you could actually go right here to all time and change the range on it. Salesforce does give us several out-of-the-box options. Depending on your setup, if you've set up your organization's fiscal year, you can use that right out of the gate as part of your criteria. It even breaks it down into quarter, but then it also gets into the standard setting of calendar year and calendar quarter, along with month. And you can even go by number of days if you'd like. So if we just set this to current calendar year, you'll notice that the dates are automatically populated in this range, and the results are automatically updated to show when, based on when they were created. Now, as we're going through this, if you decide, I set this to a year, but we really only want things that were created in the first half of the year, so we're going to change this to June 30th. And you'll notice that right as soon as we do this, again, the range is changed to custom now as we made that update. And these are just inline editing. You can also click on here for a calendar view to select based on the options that are there. Okay, so as you're looking at this, if you wanted to add some results fields to this, there's a couple different ways to do that. So we're looking at, this is specifically a mailing list, and let's say that we wanted to add the assistant's phone number. We could do that one of two ways. One, either clicking and dragging it to wherever you'd like to place it within the report. You'll notice that it's green wherever and it highlights a blue column wherever I want to insert that. It gives me the option to do that. But if I just wanted to kind of go a quicker way, I could just double click on it, and it will automatically add those fields to the far right column of your results field. Again, once we're in here, we can sort on any of these fields based on alphabetically, so descending or ascending. If we wanted to, let me take this date range off of here. We could also do a little bit of grouping. So if we wanted to group by state, that will pull these results up into a grouping. So we'll see you've got 7 records from Illinois, 1 from New Jersey, 1 from New Mexico. So it does give you a little bit of flexibility in here to offer some grouping and then use that in your results field. If you'd like to pull in some criteria outside of just the ones that are available up here, again, it's by clicking and dragging and dropping those fields up into the criteria. And then we could put in here the last name, and we're going to go with the one up top. And again, it pulls in Carol Roberts. So that's how you can edit a video right out of the gate that's already been created. But let's go back to the beginning and kind of talk about how we create one of these from scratch. So I'm going to close out of here. And from here, from the reports home tab that Matt was showing us, we would just click on this new reports button. And again, this is one of the crucial things that Matt was talking about that kind of sets the foundation for us to build our report on. The report type that we select will, like I mentioned before, dictate what fields are available to us. So if we're wanting to pull a report that has accounts and donations, I've seen several times where people will just say that they want to, let's just look at accounts first to see if we can get where we need to go, because a big part of what I want to look at is accounts. I do want to draw your attention. If you're wanting to incorporate donation information in your report and you only select accounts, it's going to really limit you for what is available. And the only thing that's going to be available on this report type for donations on the accounts record type is some of the roll-up fields that are available on your account. So it might be total gifts in the last 365 days, total gifts this year, total gifts 2 years ago. So it's some of those fields will be available on your accounts record type because they're available on your accounts object. But to get more into the donations that you're looking for, we'll want to make sure that we select the donations record type. Let me just navigate over to that. Click on the new report button again. We're going to go to donations. Okay, so now that we've got our new report that's come up and we're just getting started creating it, as part of the report type, there are some pre-selected values and pre-selected fields that come up as part of that. And it's up to you really to decide if those kind of get you part of the way towards where you want to go, or if you really would just rather start over rather than trying to manipulate the fields that are here. So one of the things I usually tend to do, unless there's a lot of fields on here that I'm going to be looking for already, is I'll just click right here on this remove all columns. That'll totally give us a blank slate for to begin working on our report. So for this donation report, we're going to look at specifically including the account name. So again, just by typing it up in this search box up here, we'll see that there's account name. I'm just going to double click on it. It's going to pull that over. And I also want to look for the primary contact associated with that. Again, just double clicking on that. We're going to include the opportunity name. Then in this instance, we've renamed it the donations. And we're going to include the amount. Close date. And the campaign, which is the primary campaign source on your donation. And you'll notice right off the bat, we've got a total of 6 records. Looking at that, we're currently set to having all donations, which are at any status. You can select if you only want the closed one or open or closed. And then we're looking at close date equal to the current fiscal quarter. So I'm going to actually change that because I want to see, I expect more records in here than just 6. So I'm going to actually open this up to all time. There we go. That's what I was expecting more. So as we're looking at this, we'll see that now this will include all the donations that have come in for everything that we've done in our organization. So if we want to drill into this and we're saying, you know what, I think I'm looking for donations that came in from a certain state. So I'm going to pull up the mailing. So I'm going to pull up the mailing city. We're looking for something that came in from a specific city. And I know that as we're drilling into this, you can tell that some don't have the information. It's going to pull up the information that's directly on those donor records. So as we're looking at the mailing city, we do have some qualifiers here. So this is where we're going to tell it, do we want it to equal to what we're going to put in here? Is it not equal to? Some of these are specific to numbers. Does it contain or not contain? So we're going to say it's equal to New York. And we'll see that Alvin George's donation came in from New York. And now the thing I want to draw your attention to is, as we use these qualifiers, if we switched it from equals to, which is a very specific 100% equals New York, to contains or starts with, then it kind of gives us some flexibility. So I'm going to change this just to starts with, and sometimes this can help find gifts that we know are in there, but maybe there was a little bit of spelling difference, or this one actually happens to be New York City. And then if we actually change this to starts with new, It'll also include one from Newark. So just some kind of things to keep in mind as you're working within the report and building it out, that how you set up your criteria will dictate the results that you get. And as you're looking for some of those gifts that are in there, some of this can, this can really kind of hem us in if we're not careful and we say that everything needs to be equal to New York. So you can also add multiple criteria. So as we're also going to look for, we wanted to look for primary campaign source equals, again, that gets into, sometimes it's easier to just say starts with. Actually, I'm going to put does not contain 2015 on run. We're going to click OK. It's going to wipe out these results. And then I'll actually remove that. And it'll bring up every gift outside of that campaign. So then the other important thing to remember to do after you've actually created the report and created the criteria and your results is to make sure that you click run your report. In this particular screen, as we're working on it, it will show us the first 50 records available on that report. And then once you get over to this run screen, it will show you up to the first 2,000 records of your results. Again, once we're over here, we can still click on these headers to sort alphabetically. And you do have some options to change the date ranges on here as well. And with that, I'll turn it back to Matt for questions.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I think we've got a few questions that have come in via the chat box here. And we've got a number of them answered. Dan, I'm wondering if you could actually go in and show the folks a bit about the summary feature within our report. Maybe we can go ahead and summarize based off of our campaign source, for example, and then show them also how we can go ahead and calculate the total amount of the donations within our report here, looking at average, the largest value, and the smallest value.
Absolutely. We'll just jump back into this the customize. And so from here, let's go right to the amount, and we'll work on the summary of that field right from the beginning. So on the drop-down menu next to it, we're going to click on summarize this field. And we actually have the option for the sum, the average, the max, and the minimum. So let's just select all of those so we can include that. And then we're also going to group by the campaign name. So after we've done that, then we're going to, and we run the report, it'll actually break these up into the groups of the different campaigns and show us the summary of the amount that's come in for each campaign, the average, the max, and the minimum.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. That was fantastic. I'm kind of looking through our questions right now. And I think as I scroll through, I've been answering a number of them via the chat feed. So if anybody else is curious, you can open up your chat feed here as well and have a look at some of the responses that we have here. Dan, do you want to go back to the report's home screen as well? And maybe show everyone the introduction to creating a dashboard. Just maybe talking through the different columns that exist, and then also the different elements that you can pull into a dashboard.
Sure. So there are a few dashboards that are already created out of the box, but if you're looking to create one specifically right from scratch, this new dashboard is the place to start. One thing you will want to consider before you actually get into creating your dashboard is you want to have an idea of your end game, have an idea of what information you're wanting to be viewable on this dashboard. So that way you can start building your reports out, because you will need to build the specific reports that's going to pull the data that you're looking for, create those reports initially. And then there's some limitations on some report types and how they correlate over to certain components within the dashboard. So step one would be decide what information you're going to want to have as part of your dashboard. And then the second step would be to start building those reports out. Once you've built those reports, then you've got three in the dashboard, the way it is available currently on Classic. You've got the 3 columns that go across laterally, and then you can place, it does give you quite a bit of space to place a lot of things vertically within your dashboard. And again, you're going, whether you want funnels or bar graphs or pie charts or gauges, some report types, and we might get into this in a different instance, but some report types will only work on these matrix or tables, while other report types will get into feeding into some of the charts easier. And so, again, this is a great place to start if you're looking to build something out from scratch. You'll notice up here at the top that right now it's viewable as me. You do have a few, I believe it's 7 or 9 dashboards that you can make viewable based on the viewer's permissions. And other than that, as long as you're letting everybody view it regardless of the permissions, then you can have several dashboards. So again, great place to start as you're pulling these in, but key, know what information you want at the beginning to get to.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. I'm just kind of scrolling a few more questions that we've received here. One of them here I'm just going to read off quick. Once data is summarized for total sum of donations by donor, then exported into Excel, the sum is locked into the purple border rather than a separate column. How can we avoid that? Unfortunately, when it comes time to use our printable view or export details options within the Salesforce platform, we don't have a lot of pull as far as defining how it actually translates into the into the Excel environment. So when we're looking at a summary view, Dan, I don't know if you can go ahead and open back up that households with donations report we were looking at a second ago.
Sure.
And go ahead and I might have said the wrong report there. Whatever report it is we were just looking at with those donations on there, or the summary of the account.
Okay. I didn't actually save the custom report that I was just building. Let me go through and recreate that real quick.
But essentially, if you can, go ahead and just summarize the amount column there. And then do a printable view and do Excel. And so everybody can see what this will ultimately look like in Excel. Now, what you're going to notice here is that if you want to remove those summarizations when you're running your report, as Dan is opening up here, this is how they're going to display. If you don't want them as part of your report result, you'll have to remove the summarization before you do your export or your printable view. Otherwise, obviously, you can come into Excel and delete them this way. But again, it's just another example of how, if you're thinking about some sort of larger format report for your organization, an annual report or something like that, that printable view can be extremely helpful. Already gets you on your way from a summarization or customization perspective. We're taking that information out of Salesforce, perhaps into Excel and then out into another graphic design or Word document structure. Thanks, Dan. All right. And with that, I think we've answered all the different questions that we have within our chat here today. I definitely want to go ahead and thank everybody for joining us at Cathexis Partners here this afternoon for our basics in reporting in Salesforce for nonprofit organizations. Keep in mind, we did record this webinar and we'll be sending it out to you in just a short matter of time. So again, thank you all very much, and I hope you have a great day.